Hello, welcome to my channel, and thank you for being here. The image I'm talking about today, the images, there are two. The first one, the caption reads, "A woman from a tenant farmer family forcibly evicted off a white-owned farm reports her plight to community elders." Weenan, KwaZulu-Natal, 1988. And yeah, I've already spoken in earlier talks about the Sweenan area and tenant farmers being forcibly evicted off their farms, off the not their farm, I mean farms that they lived on, that had traditionally been their land, that before they became white-owned farms. We forget that the history of white occupation in KwaZulu-Natal is not that old, actually. From the 1830s onwards. Um, Vast swathes of this region were occupied by white farmers and people that chose to remain on those areas had to come to terms with arrangements to work for the white farmers um, who were largely Afrikaner farmers who had left the Eastern Cape and the Cape um, in protest against the end of slavery and were hard pressed to find workers to work these farms, these huge tracts of land that they occupied and made farms of. And so these were the indigenous occupants of this region. And this somewhat curious image is that it does kind of it creates a sense of, especially when people look at a woman surrounded by men, um, and and it creates those kind of questions of why is she like almost being subjected to a interrogation of some sort by. But these are this is a this is the traditional hierarchy. There is definitely and always has been a place for women in these kind of traditional tribal settings. um, Women would not sit amongst the men, but to the side in a group, on their own group as such. And so I suppose this image has some sort of drama to it because of the way it's composed, and with the dappled lighting and people finding a bit of shade. Weenan, for those of you who know, is an incredibly hot, dry place. The Tugela Ferry, in particular, even more so. Um, and and so you have this image, and a year later, I produced the second image that is kind of related to this one, which is tenant farmers evicted from white-owned farms in a refugee camp. Weenan, KwaZulu-Natal, 1989. So the previous one was in 1988, and this one that we're looking at now in 1989. And as I said, I was a visitor a few times to this big refugee camp, tents in this way, about in the region of about 50 tents in in the countryside for people who were freshly off these now white-owned farms. And this image, captures quite a lot. The Isidwaba uh, skirts that probably that this woman was this family and this woman might have been using or making, actually, and airing out here for as a precious belonging, um, in this transitory state that they were in, highly debilitating state of them being forcibly evicted. We look at the refugee problem in Europe right now, or from the Middle East, West Asia, more likely. Um, and we see how over and over we fabricate refugee situations where, if it wasn't for geopolitics, there would be absolutely no need to remove people in the way that these people were removed, or in the way the contemporary people are being removed from Libya, from Africa, through destabilized economies, through manufactured uh, uh, violence and unrest, and destabilized communities. Um, and um, one sees that, that this, and as I've spoken in the past about my family, having been twice refugees in the short space of, of um, the last 2 centuries. um, and so, I have some personal experience of what that's meant, generations down, to be subjected to this kind of trauma. It's a trauma, really. There's no other way to describe it. It's destabilizing, and it's a trauma, and it's one that, thankfully, we aren't, being subjected to immediately. Apart from perhaps maybe economic refugees, people still having to leave, for instance, the Eastern Cape and head to the cities, in the hope of a better life, when in fact, we need to stabilize regions and support regions, so that people can remain in where they are, not have to constantly be on the move. And some might argue that even in um, like in a South African context, um, many of our children are having to leave and to go and work abroad, because our economy is not performing, and or there's too much uncertainty about it. Um, yeah, but as somebody who has paid a lot of attention to geopolitics for the last 25, 30 years, I understand that this is a contrived situation completely. When Walter Rodney wrote um, about the underdevelopment of Africa, um, it was a conscious, absolutely conscious process of underdeveloping uh, certain, colonized parts of the world, for instance. What took place with India, for instance, of how that great economy was sabotaged, or China, um, large parts of Asia, certainly Africa, and we should not have to be looking at and contemplating images like this, and having to imagine the plight of this woman reporting her situation, fortunately to her own people, caring people, who uh, um, would make decisions that were best suited for the welfare of her and her family. So I'd like to think that there is some purpose to these images that are now part of history, and it's to educate us to the need to be more caring people, a more caring nation, that really works towards um, putting our people first, putting the people of the planet first, and 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 in, and seeing people as important humans. As And there's a tendency for people to think that, for some people to think that humans are the cause of the problem. Well, yes, there might be humans, but they're a tiny minority who cause these problems. Humans are not the problem. Humans are the answer to the problem, actually. And we, in the way that these men, were responding here, um, that is the beginning of the answer. So I'll end it there and say thank you for watching. And more information on myself and my website and my work can be found on my website, a link to which, including my blog and email address, can be found in the description below. If you like this talk, remember to click the like button and press subscribe. It helps the channel grow.